Hey, just wanted to make a follow-up video to the monetization video I made earlier in the week. I think, that after I made that video, read the comments and I talked to some of my friends, it seems like the video was pretty well received, and thanks everyone for watching, but also seemed like, the video was very critical, and it wasn't necessarily giving sort of like a set of recommendations on like what a good path forward would be. So hopefully with this video, what I can do is actually like provide some like constructive, proposals about like what could they do instead, and how would I be monetizing things. And obviously I'll get a bit more into the problems, but only in the context of trying to provide a good solution. And as you can see, I have a very ethical build going on here. Just don't worry about that too much. So, the one assumption that I want to kind of like lay out before I get into things, because it's an important assumption, it's around like the actual way the game is monetized. So, right now I have no understanding of the company's financial situation. Like, I don't know how they get their money, for lack of a better way of putting it. My understanding currently is that they've done crowdfunding and that's it. There's no like outside investors that are participating in the business. And the reason why that's relevant is because the place your money comes from and the way you get your money determines a lot about your incentives and what flexibility and autonomy you have as a company. And so, if you're fully bootstrapped, aka like crowdfunded, just taking money from us, you basically have the autonomy and the agency to do whatever you want. You don't have a board, you don't have any sort of supervision, adult supervision, and basically there's no expectations. The only requirement, I guess, and it's not technically even a requirement, is that like the business stays solvent, like it needs to pay the bills so it can like keep operating. But I mean, I guess who cares? You could choose to not even do that if that was really what you wanted to do. So I think that my assumption going in is they haven't taken any outside money. Now, what I will say is that actually, if they'd taken outside money, it might even make the situation better. And the reason I say that is that one of the implications of taking like external capital is that the timeline and the specific like sort of margins and like kind of outcomes for the business change. When you're working with venture capitalists, it doesn't matter if they're like good ones or scummy ones or whatever. Usually they have like a very specific timeline that they expect to return money from their funds. It's usually like 6 to 10 years, but it's usually more towards like 10 years. And what that means is that venture capitalists in general are not interested in like very short-term immediate profits. They're not like trying to make a quick buck. They're trying to do that over some longer time frame. And so because of that, if there was VCs invested in this company, they would likely be telling Tempo, like I would be telling Tempo if I was their investor, ruthlessly optimize for user acquisition. Do not care about monetization. Making money is not the important concern right away. Just simply focus all your efforts on getting more users onto the platform, because in general, in like Silicon Valley and in tech and all of that, there is an expectation and assumption that acquisition of users today is available to, or is possible to turn into profits in the future. Like that's how all the social media platforms worked historically. Now it's a little less true in like the current economy and market, but it's generally still true. Like a lot of businesses are kind of like directed and guided in this way, at least in the early stages, which Tempo is in. They haven't even done a GA release. So I would say that my assumption right now is they haven't taken any external capital. And so the only like incentive and requirement they have explicitly is that they need to keep the lights on. Outside of that, like they can truly do whatever they want. So if they're choosing to be greedy, that's because they've chosen to be greedy. They don't have any sort of pressure on them or requirement to be greedy. That's just like something that, they've decided that they need to do because of, the choices that they've made. Cool. So just front loading that. So yeah, I want to get into like my proposal. I think the proposal really has two parts. There's really two different things that I would like, really change or think about. The first one has to do with like what you're actually getting when you swipe your card. And I'm going to disconnect that from like what you're actually spending, the thing that you use or you get when you swipe your card. Because to me, those are like fundamentally separate problems. And I'm going to just go and kind of do a case study, for lack of a better way of putting it, of a bunch of other companies that, kind of are in this space or are relevant to me, some of which I brought up in the last video, and kind of use them as a comparison of how they could be doing things. And so, the core of my suggestion is that there only be one, or one main thing that you can actually get when you swipe a credit card in the game. And so my primary example will be League of Legends. And I'm going to use a version of League of Legends that I played, which is kind of older, but I think it still stands true for the most part. And in the version of League of Legends that I played back in the day, there was basically two currencies within the game. There was IP, which is basically, I'm going to call it earned points. It's basically something you can only get by playing the game. And then there's RP, riot points, or some crap like that. And basically those are premium points that you get when you purchase, the points with money. There's no way to earn riot points by playing the game. You can only get them with dollars. And there's no way to get IP by buying them. You can only get it by playing the game. And so everything in the game, all the purchasable stuff, whether it be characters or skins or even these things called runes at one point, they were all sold for a price in IP and RP separately. You couldn't do a hybrid or anything like that. And so, if you have played the game a lot, there's many situations where you can actually buy whatever the thing is that you're interested in simply by using the points that you've earned in the game, IP. And if you do not want to use those points, or you do not have those points, you have the option to buy points, RP, and spend it instead. Now, the beauty of this is that there's only one thing that customers ever buy. It's RP. Now, you could argue it's sort of totally not totally true, because they're actually going to just buy RP to buy something. But that's actually materially important for reasons I might not get into in this video. But there's a company called Snowflake, and they sort of innovated in pricing and stuff by having this indirect model of credits, or whatever you want to call it, their own monopoly money. If you watch It's Always Sunny, so Patty's bucks. So yeah, I think there is a value to having this indirection. But I think there's more benefit outside of just, getting people to buy your monopoly dollars. And one of those benefits is that when you have these two different types of points, like the ones that you earn and the ones that you buy, it gives people a way to quantify their value of their time. Because in League of Legends, even if you didn't roughly know or exactly know how many IP points that you were earning per hour when you play the game, you probably had a decent understanding of well, I played all month and I only got 2,000 or 5,000 or whatever IP points. And so you kind of know well, if I just spend $10 or whatever the equivalent of RP points are, it's going to save me what I worked hard on for the last month. And then maybe I can use that on something else. And so I think immediately there's this tangibility to the points when you have this dual system of oh, I know exactly how much this is worth to me. There's also a fungibility. Fungibility basically means that you can use something for multiple things, or it's repurposable. And so the RP points are well, I bought these points because I really wanted a skin, but then actually I realized the skin was on sale. So actually instead I'm going to buy it with IP, and then I'm going to be able to use this on a character. And the company gets the benefit of having the upfront transaction, they get to float the funds. And then, you get the benefit of having the sort of agility or maneuverability with how you want to spend it. So yeah, I think for these reasons, this dual system is really, really great. I think that it also just means that there's less transacting happening. You don't have to make a decision where to spend your dollars. Worst case, you spend it on the the points, and then you hold them and you wait, and that's not the end of the world. And so I think that the dual system generally is just a well converged on conclusion by a lot of people in the industry. Now, there's some companies that don't have a solution like this. Sometimes they don't do it for free at all. Steam, for example, they have just Steam dollars, and essentially that's the only thing that you're able to get. Now, there are ways to earn Steam dollars by playing games that don't require you to spend money. For example, as I said in the last video, you can play Counter-Strike and you can get things like skins just by playing the game for free and sell those for Steam dollars. And again, they're not real dollars because you cannot convert them back to USD or another fiat and spend them to buy a car. They're always stuck within the Steam marketplace. So yeah, this is the first thing that I would change about the game. I would make it so there's only one thing that you can ever swipe your card for in the Bazaar. It's premium gems, whatever you want to call them, tempo gems. I don't know. That's not my strong suit. I'm not going to try to name, Tempo's currency for them. But they need to have some sort of premium gens. And essentially everything that, I'm going to discuss as this video moves forward, would at minimum be purchasable with these premium gems. And in many cases, or maybe all cases, in my mind, I think pretty much all cases should work. You can also purchase them with like the earned gems, which we know is just gems right now. So that is the most drastic change. I guess it's not maybe the most drastic change, but it's the most base fundamental change is now you just buy gems. So let's get into the specifics of what can you purchase with gems? Which is a great question that you're able to ask now that the only thing you can get is gems. And the answer is there's a mixture of things. So I think, the first thing I'll do is tell you what there won't be. And for sure there will not be a subscription. A subscription for a game like this makes absolutely zero sense. It is mind-bogglingly stupid. It has no actual logical basis. There's actually a logic to when subscriptions make sense. It's not always just a way to grab cash. I would say that most of the time successful subscriptions are predicated on the assumption of recurring and increasing value that you're gaining from the subscription itself. And so I'm going to use Netflix as an example of this. The reason why I'm using Netflix is because, they're a very successful subscription business, maybe one of the most prominent ones that has come about in the last decade or two. And the whole basis of Netflix's subscription model is that every month people have an assumption that when they pay their Netflix bill, the reason they're doing that is because they've gotten more value out of Netflix than the month before. Or at minimum, they're getting the exact same value that they had, which is actually most of the cases you get more value. More things are being added to Netflix. And Netflix, even in their case, they only were able to do this because they did not actually start out, as you might all remember, as a software business, as a SaaS subscription business. Netflix started out as a physical delivery service. And the reason why, that's a really good place to kind of go back to in terms of explaining why subscriptions make sense sometimes, is that, you did not need as a consumer to have all that much trust in Netflix. Because, when you first start out a new subscription, the hardest thing to establish is yeah, but why should I continue to believe? Why should I assume that you're going to keep giving me value from the thing? I don't know you. Are you going to tell me everything I'm going to get in the future so I can have zero doubt? And the thing is that, Netflix did not have to answer this question. And the reason why is because Netflix's basic premise was any DVD or any movie that you would want to watch that is available as a DVD is going to be available on Netflix. And in 99% of cases, that was the truth. If there was a DVD of a movie, you could get it on Netflix. Maybe you have to wait a bit or whatever, but it doesn't matter. So as a Netflix customer, if you're am I going to get more value out of Netflix next month? The only thing that you have to ask is, are movies going to continue to be made? Because if movies keep being made, you keep getting value out of Netflix because Netflix has all the movies. So you don't have to trust Netflix. I mean, you do. You have to trust that they're going to keep doing what they're already doing the month that you have them. But you get more value assuming they do that. So this is a perfect example of recurring and increasing value that a platform is providing through their service. Now, in the case of the Bazaar, this is not happening at all. Okay, there is not only no clearly increasing value, but the recurring value isn't even there. Why? Because they don't even tell you what you're getting in the next month. The page right now just says, here's what you get for March. That's it. Regardless of whether those things are good or bad, not really the point I'm trying to make. The point is that all you get to see is this is what I'm getting for March, and I have no idea what I'm getting for April, even though it's halfway through March. So I have to completely trust that whatever I'm getting in April is something that I'm going to be excited and happy about, which like could be true, but like isn't necessarily true. And I'll tell you, I'm not going to try to like slander them or anything like this, but I'm just like this. Just be 100% honest about it. The reason why subscriptions are popular when they don't make sense is that like serially consumers are really bad at canceling their subscriptions. They're really bad at stopping them, even when they're not getting the value that they should. Like gyms being the canonical, like, you know, primitive example of that. And so like, yeah, I think it's really easy for them to put out a subscription and just get people on the hook for money, even if they do a terrible job of delivering value. And like, then they still keep, you know, reaping the profits from it, which is kind of absurd. And so, I think that even like at minimum, if they had a calendar that said, oh, this is what you get for April, and they don't have to say exactly what it is, like they just have to say, even though there's even those like box subscriptions that you get where they send you like physical goods that are like a random assortment, they even tell you roughly what you get in the box. Maybe not exactly, they want you to be surprised, but they tell you like, yeah, and usually they tell you like a month or two out, this is roughly what you're going to be getting in that month's box. Okay, that's awesome. So, I wouldn't pay for those myself. I think that's kind of a scam too, but like at least it's better. So right now this subscription model is just bad because it's not clear what I'm going to get in the future. It's not even clear if it's worth the value I'm getting now because it's hard to price $9.99. As we're going to move into it, the Battle Pass, it confuses the whole equation about where should I put my dollars? Because if you imagine your question is like, I just want to play the new pig items. Well, technically a subscription in the Bazaar is a path to that in some way, shape, or form. And the reason I say that is because when you want the pig items, the most like obvious path to do that is that there is the Battle Pass. And the Battle Pass, after you reach level 25, gives you the pig item pack. Now, you could directly pay like 10,000 gems or $100 to get those items, but maybe you don't want to do that because you're not like insane. And so instead you're like, well, I'm going to earn it. Well, the subscription actually allows you to get increased number of gems on the increased number of XP, amount of XP on the Battle Pass. So like now you have to factor in like, is $9.99 worth that? Like how much does that compare to me just buying the gems? Okay, so let's move into the Battle Pass. So the Battle Pass actually is one of the less problematic things in general, not the specific implementation of it. Okay, so let's immediately axe these like items being connected to it. No, the items shouldn't be connected to it. But the Battle Pass as a concept is not actually terrible. I think there's lots of examples out there where that Battle Pass system actually is pretty solid. And I think the one that I'm going to use as my primary example is Counter-Strike. In Counter-Strike, there is a Battle Pass. It is not tied to the actual amount of like, there's no functional outcome of the Battle Pass in Counter-Strike. It's purely a cosmetics thing. And you might even ask, well, if it's purely cosmetics, you can also buy cosmetics in Counter-Strike, right? Why, or like chests or whatever. Why not just buy those? Well, the answer is it's actually cheaper than just directly buying chests. They subsidize it, for lack of a better way of putting it. And so you actually get a discount on the cosmetics, or like the chests, which are indirectly cosmetics, when you buy the Battle Pass in Counter-Strike. Now, why would a company do that? Why would they like give away something for less than they could just sell it for? Great question. The answer is that in Counter-Strike, they do this, and like in many games they do this because they want to, essentially they want to incentivize people to play the game more. And this is a really beautiful alignment of incentives, if you think about it. Basically, from Counter-Strike's perspective, we can basically charge people money to buy something that they would otherwise buy for slightly more money. But maybe they wouldn't buy that. Maybe this type of buyer, this specific consumer, like genuinely wouldn't like spend this amount of money to actually buy it outright. So instead, they will be willing to pay this amount of money that's smaller. And on top of the fact that we still get money from someone who may not pay us money anyway, in order to like get the benefit, they actually have to play our game, which is the best thing in the world. They all these companies, all products want users to actually use the thing. Like that's the best long-term success metric, is like how much are the users actually engaged with their product and using it. So this is an amazing situation for Counter-Strike because people get what they want. They get to do it a little cheaper, but they have to play the game a bunch. So I think the Counter-Strike system is really great, as I said, because it allows people to get something slightly cheaper and incentivizes them to play the game more. It's purely cosmetic, so it has no functional outcome on the game. Even the things like the new maps that are often part of the like Battle Pass in Counter-Strike are not usually in the competitive map pool, and if they are, it does not require the Battle Pass to play them. So I think it's a really good example of the Battle Pass being done right. I'm not actually familiar with Genshin Impact. Like I haven't played it myself, but I have a friend who I trust a lot. I was talking about this just like the other day. He said they also do it great. It's actually funny because it's like a Chinese gacha game and they actually don't incentivize anything functional, which is like sort of depressing when you consider that Tempo does. And so I believe that their Battle Pass is actually super generous. It's also only $4. And by the way, this game has been around for like 12 years and has way more freaking content than the Bazaar. So take that for what you will. Yeah. So I think the battle pass is a good idea. I think that it needs to be changed in the following manners. It should cost gems, either premium or earned gems, probably both, to be done. And if you again want to charge a higher amount of the earned gems initially for like a month to like get people to pay more and like as a gem sink or whatever, sure, that's fine. I think one of the things, not to get too distracted, that I should have touched on with the two gem model is that they might be worried that okay, if we allow people to buy things for the gems that essentially are like earned, then they probably have a bunch of those stockpiled because like we haven't really had a gem sink so far in the game, and now we're going to have like all these new things we're releasing and people who have just been playing a lot, they don't need to spend money because they just have it all already. Yeah, okay, I get it. I mean, it's dumb. I'll tell you why it's dumb, because they should assume the majority of their revenue comes from users they have not acquired yet. So all these people that are playing the game right now are irrelevant. We're all irrelevant because like if they have any sort of like ego or like vision for this game, like we're such a small fraction of the future eventual player base, and they can capitalize on that for revenue. They don't need to like milk what they have already. The only reason you would do that, honestly, unless you're just purely greedy for cash right now, is to like keep the lights on. So assuming that they're like not doing that, that's only two. Yes, tech, not a tool. Oh, rip. Anyway, assuming that, they're not doing that, I think that they shouldn't really need to try to artificially remove gems from the economy. But if they did want to do that, they could do what League of Legends did, which is that when a new character or whatever is released, they artificially increase the price of it and earn points. Like normally it's 6,400, maybe it'll be like 12,800 for the first month. And if you really wanted that badly, then you'll spend more of like the in-game earned currency. And if you don't, then you'll wait. And I think that's like at least a better solution than what they currently have. So I think that, going back to the pricing, I think, yes, the battle pass should be a thing. It should give you cosmetics only, and it should be available for a price of both earned and, premium points, depending on which one you want to spend. Cool. So now let's move on to things that, like essentially I think they could add like new monetization mechanisms that they should add into the game. So yeah, I think the first one, that's like, I don't know if it's like the easiest, but just more cosmetics. I think that there's a huge market for cosmetics in this game. I think the type of cosmetics can be a lot more creative. So I think that, for example, there could be cosmetics that I saw like a post on Reddit earlier that was suggesting that they make like custom animations for things like Boulder and stuff like that you could buy. That's awesome. I think I know a lot of people personally that would totally buy that. So I think that's like one great example. I think that there's a bunch of things that you could just do with boards. I love boards. Like I remember I just got this board recently and I was like ecstatic. It's like the coolest thing in the world to me because I didn't have a board before. If you let me just buy a new board directly, I would totally do that in a heartbeat. Like it wouldn't even be a question. I would just buy the freaking thing. So I think like, there's just so many options for them to create really interesting cosmetics. And I know I've heard some arguments like, from people online about something in Runeterra and like, I don't know, I can name a million different games that have successfully monetized on cosmetics, okay? It's not like a foreign thing. I think you can just make better cosmetics. You can make new novel types of cosmetics. But there's also other types of cosmetics that aren't exactly what we're thinking of right now that might be interesting. So for example, having the ability to taunt another player when you win, and having it so your ghost does that when it beats another player. I know for sure many people that would buy this. And you might be going, I don't know. I don't think people would actually care about that. That's probably just because you're like a better person than the people I know. I think it's a very spiteful and childish thing that actually a lot of people I know would love to do, including myself. I think it would be pretty funny. So, like I'm willing to accept that about myself, but I think that's totally a route that they could make a lot of money from. So I'm like not sure why they wouldn't do that. I think that, sort of like in the same thread vein, I think another thing they could do, and it's a bit different actually, but it's actually a really, I think, novel idea, is letting you bet on your own outcomes. So like, to be super clear, people probably freak out and be like, no, this is so horrible idea. But you can only bet on yourself to win. And the way that it would work in my mind is that, like, you're about to do a PvP encounter, and maybe the game doesn't always let you do it. It's like random. And it's like, do you think you're going to win this match? Well, you bet like 400 gems. And if you win this match, like, you'll get like 3 times the number of chests at the end of the game or something like that. This is really cool because it adds like a whole metagame aspect to playing the Bazaar that doesn't exist today. And you can be like, oh, I have a really strong build, and like you don't know what your opponent's gonna have. It's a gem sink because basically it's gonna cost gems, either paid or otherwise, to take them out. But like maybe the return versus like using those gems directly to get something, like you can't buy chests right now, but imagine you could. Maybe the return is higher than if you just went and bought the chest directly. And so there's this very clear like value trade-off on essentially the confidence you have in the bet that you're making. So I think that's another thing they could do. And I think that, again, as long as you can't bet on yourself to lose, there's no real like integrity issues with that. I don't see that really being like a fundamental issue for the game itself. I don't see it being like integrity breaking. Another idea. They could absolutely do something that, like, and I know people are going to freak out. Like, I don't think this game did a good job monetizing in general, but like the newer version of RuneScape has a paid version of like analytics. It's like Rune Metrics or something that basically gives you some like better insights about the game and how you're playing, et cetera, et cetera. And I found this very useful back when I played RuneScape 3. Now in old school RuneScape, it doesn't exist because they kind of like they have an open source client. It's very hard to like kind of put the lid back on that, put the what is that? You can't put Pandora back in the box or whatever. Yeah. So I think that, that one is harder for old school RuneScape. But in RuneScape 3, that is actually one of the like monetization mechanisms that people generally don't have an issue with. And so I think that, that is like a totally viable solution, is that they could expand on like sort of the analytics that they've already shown us with the career page and like match history, and make a version that's more premium, that basically, like is an upsell. And I for sure would pay for that. Like some concrete examples of what they could do. One thing is they could tell us, like what items we have the highest win rates with. Like, oh, if we're playing Vanessa and we get a cutlass, like we have very high win rate, or we have very low win rate with some other item. I think things like that would be super interesting for us as we're playing the game, to kind of like develop a better pattern match of like what does and doesn't work. So I think that's an awesome example of something that, they could make more money on and people would pay for. Now, they probably shouldn't charge for things like the match history, because that's a very primitive and like fundamental thing, and I don't think it would really make sense. Like that would be it would be annoying if they actually charge for that. So I think they shouldn't do that. But I think the more advanced stuff, maybe even like, show what items in general have the best. I mean, maybe don't do that. It'll be like forcing a meta. But I mean, I think going that direction is very interesting. So that's another idea. And then my last idea, which I actually think is maybe the coolest, it is more cosmetics. Again, most of my ideas are cosmetics. Like, I guess you could also argue, by the way, I haven't touched on this. So before I get into my last proposal, in regards to the item packs, if I was in charge, I would just make them free, just straight up free. My argument for how we would make money is that we don't care, because we're just trying to get more users right now, and new content brings in new users, end of story. Now, you could even argue you can make money on them, because every time you release new items, they're going to have new cosmetics, and like people are going to want the cosmetics, which then are going to drive them to purchase things, and therefore you make money as a company. But you don't even need to, like, I don't think, go down that route. Just like bring more users into the game. That's all that matters to you right now. More users. But if you really wanted to, you could absolutely have a system where you're basically charging for the packs. And the way you do it is, again, you just use these points, because that's the only thing you spend money on in my model. And each time a new pack comes out, there's a price in like the earn points, like the I gems and the premium gems, the ones that you actually swipe your credit card for. And then it's up to you as a consumer to decide, like, do I want to spend my like premium gems or my like earned gems on this thing. And I think that's like it's not a great solution, but at least it's better because, players who play a lot don't have to wait and like they get this thing. And even if you want to charge a little bit more for it, feel free to go ahead and do that. Anyway, so yeah. And then lastly, I want to talk about my last proposal. And I will say that it is, I don't know why I went to the shop. It is, heavily borrowed from like the combat achievement system in old school RuneScape. I think it's a really good system. And so the basic way that the combat achievement system in old school RuneScape works is that there's a bunch of bosses and combat like encounters and things in RuneScape. And when you do them, either based on how many times you've done them or whether you've like done certain mechanics in a certain way, or there's a bunch of different really. There's a bunch of different like bosses and stuff like that, and whenever you do them, you get these combat achievements, assuming you do them in the way that you're expected to. And these combat achievements in RuneScape's case don't directly give you any sort of reward. Like it's not one-to-one with getting anything. The way that it works is after you've like essentially done some number of combat achievements. Each one is worth a certain number of points based on its difficulty. And after you've done a certain number, you get a tier of the combat system unlocked. So it's like, I don't remember what the beginning tier is. It's eventually like Grandmaster and Master and stuff like that. And so easy, medium, hard, Grandmaster, or Master, Grandmaster, something like that maybe. And on those tiers are a bunch of rewards, and they're pretty good. So I think what you could do is offer something like that for the Bazaar. And the way that I would suggest that it works is that you actually sell these things called like challenge pack or like a challenge token or something. And you like buy a specific challenge. So for example, there might be a challenge that's like, as Vanessa, win 10 ranked games in a row with 10 wins each. Now it's a really difficult one. I'm not saying they should do that specifically. That's probably too hard. But like the general idea is like something that's like actually impressive. And if a player buys that thing and completes it, they essentially get this really unique skin that's like a Vanessa only skin that like is really hard to obtain because you have to have completed that challenge. And people can know that if they're looking at that, like, wow, not only like I know that person couldn't have just paid for that. Like they actually had to have earned that as well. And it's going back to the battle pass thing. It aligns the incentives in a perfect way, which is like it encourages people to play the game. Like they actually want to play the game because that's the only way that they can complete this achievement. And so I think it's like a marriage of the most amazing things. And you can really go a long way with this because, you can have it for many different types of things. When new items come out, you can have achievements around the items. You can have achievements around different builds. You can have achievements around different types of diversity things. And eventually you can even do something that's like kind of nested or composed where you're like, imagine that Vanessa challenge, there's an equivalent one for Pig and Dooley. And imagine that like you actually can buy a challenge thing that's like, or automatically you get it if you have done all three and purchased all three, where it's like, oh, you have to have done all three of these to get it. And then you get a really sick hybrid skin that's like, I have gotten the hardest challenge done in all the characters. I know for sure that if that was a thing that I could buy today, I would buy it. And I probably couldn't even do it. I don't even think I'd be able to complete it. I would just do it. And I think that actually is maybe the biggest argument against this suggestion is that like it could be very discouraging if like, for whatever reason you actually can't complete the thing. So I think you need to have a mixture where they're like, tiers of difficulty. But I think it would be really awesome. It would give people a reason to play the game. It would sort of replace the need for this terrible quest system because I'd actually be excited to do that. I'm like, oh yeah, if I do this challenge, then like I get this thing. Like even if it's a really dumb one, like die to like win a 10 game match where you die to 4 PvE encounters. Like tell me that wouldn't be freaking cool. Like knowing that you like lost 4 PvE encounters and you still 10-1 and like you get a skin to show that that would be freaking awesome. I'd love that. So yeah, I think this is like I could probably spend an entire video just like fleshing out that entire system and all the different things that you can earn. But I think that's like maybe the most exciting one for me in terms of like what actually is healthy for the game, but also, makes Tempo a lot of money and makes a lot of money pretty quickly. Cool. So I said I was going to keep it short. I think it's about half as long as it was before. Hopefully I wasn't too distracted playing, that the video still made sense. But thanks for watching. Have a great night.